What's up guys, my name is Ace, and it's finally that time of the year where the next Call of Duty game is right around the corner, and it's time to take a look back at the most recent game now that its realistic life cycle is coming to an end. And I always like splitting this up into two separate videos, the first one being what the game did right, and then the second one focusing on the more negative aspects of it. So in today's video, we're going to be focusing on the positive things and what Vanguard did right in my eyes. Now, just a few disclaimers, of course. This is all my opinions based on my experiences and what I look for in a Call of Duty game. It's totally fine if you disagree with these things, and if you do, please let me know in a respectful fashion down below. Also, I should mention this is only focusing on the multiplayer side of things. I'm not really a zombies guy, and I didn't even play the campaign for Vanguard. I have no interest. I only care about multiplayer, so that's all we're talking about today. Additionally, like I said, we're just focusing on the positives in today's video, so even though it might sound all positive right now, it doesn't mean I don't have my issues and my gripes with this game, so please hold off until the second video comes out before you call me a shill. And then finally, a distinction I always have to make with this is it always takes more time to explain what I feel they did wrong, rather than list out what they did right. So just because this video is likely to be significantly shorter than the second one, it doesn't mean that I absolutely despise it. And with that out of the way, let's start diving into the things that I feel Vanguard did right. And the first thing I'm going to mention straight up here is quite a general topic, and this is just the core gameplay flow, especially after the spawn update that happened quite a long time ago. Now, before the spawn update, it was a bit of a different story, but that did happen a very long time ago, and since then, I feel like the core gameplay flow is generally great in this game, with maybe a few exceptions here or there, of course. I'm not saying every map plays amazing, there's definitely a few maps in there that I would much rather not be playing. But just overall, if I strip everything away and I hone in on just the core gameplay flow and what it's like going from kill to kill and controlling the map and my surroundings, I think Vanguard actually excels in this area and it's often overlooked. After that, another thing I feel Vanguard did a great job with, this is the amount of content that the game launched with. We had 16 6v6 maps at launch, which is the most we've seen for a very, very long time in Call of Duty, and that's actually been one of the big issues with many of the more recent Call of Duty games before Vanguard, is they just weren't launching with enough content, and it felt like you had to wait until like Season 2 or 3 before you felt like you had a full, complete game there when it comes to map content. Whereas with Vanguard, we had all of that right from the beginning, and that was really nice. On that same note of maps, I will say I really liked the variety that we got in our maps as well. It seemed like there were tons of different styles of maps. They're not all just the same cookie cutter 3-lane design. There was a good mix of different sizes and layouts of the maps. And while I didn't love every one of the maps, there's definitely a small handful that I would say I really don't like in Vanguard. On average, I would say I liked most of the maps in this game, and I'm glad that there's variety for people that like a different style of map as well. For some of the maps that I hated, those might be maps that other people love, and that's why I feel this variety is important. Moving on to the next thing I've got on my list, which I should mention this is in no particular order, so it might seem a little bit random and jumping all over the place. But something that I personally appreciate that I know not all of you will agree with, and that's fine. I like the fact that the footsteps in the game were not overly loud, and they also added Ninja as a perk based on player feedback. So you had the option to use Ninja as a perk or Dead Silence as a field upgrade, and I thought that was really nice overall. Now, to be clear, I wouldn't have been opposed to them buffing the bass footstep audio a little bit. I do think it could have been louder. There definitely were situations where you could sprint right up behind somebody and they couldn't hear you even if you weren't using Ninja. So I wouldn't have been opposed to a slight buff, but at the end of the day, when it comes to Call of Duty 6v6 at least, I feel the gameplay pacing and flow tends to be so much better when they lean in the direction of too quiet rather than too loud. I never really felt a severe punishment for moving around the map aggressively, and I thought that was great and definitely contributed to the first thing on my list, which is I feel this game had a great core gameplay flow. Next up on my list, a couple things that I like that they implemented with Vanguard that are relatively minor, but I still thought they were neat features that they added, and I feel like maybe they could take this to the next level going forward. I really like the fact that they had operator leveling as well as a favorite weapon for all of the operators, where if you use that operator combined with that gun, you would get a slight boost to your weapon XP earn rates. So for the people that are really trying to be as efficient as possible, they could pay attention to something like that, and I just thought that added a nice level of depth to the experience. Again, it's not a major thing by any means, but I do see it as a positive, and it's the same story with just leveling up operators as well. While it's not a complete game changer by any means, it's nice to just have another thing that you can level up in the background if you choose to do that. If you are somebody that likes to complete tasks and level things up and max everything out, it was just nice to have that extra layer of progression outside of effectively just leveling up your gun and grinding for camos. Now, another thing I did like about Vanguard quite a bit is the fact that there was good weapon variety overall. Something I'd see really frequently in my live streams, for instance, is people would come in and say, like, what's the current meta gun? Or what are the top guns currently in the game? And most of the time, my honest answer to this is basically you can use almost any assault rifle or SMG in the game due to their versatility. And as long as you're using the right attachments, you've got yourself a meta gun. Like right now, in the game's current state, I'd say there are at least a dozen weapons that I would feel just as confident using even in a highly competitive lobby where I happen to be playing against really good players. And I can't say the same for most other Call of Duty games. Usually there's like those top 3 or 4 guns that everybody knows those are the top guns, those are the meta guns. And if you're in a really tough lobby against highly skilled players, you essentially have to use those guns just to keep your head above the water. Whereas in Vanguard, like I said, I'd say that list has expanded to about a dozen guns as long as I'm not restricted at all in my attachment choice. Now, there are some downsides to this as well that I'll be talking about in the What Vanguard Did Wrong video, so it's not all sunshine and rainbows here, but at least I can appreciate the amount of weapon variety that was out there with this system. As for the next thing on my list, this one's getting pretty specific, but I do appreciate this quite a bit. This is the fact that Vanguard didn't have any defensive lethal equipment like a Claymore or a Bouncing Betty. The closest thing we had to this was the S-Mine, which is in the tactical category, so it was non-lethal in core game modes. And while you could combine that with a satchel, if you put a satchel on top of one of those S-Mines, the S-Mine would actually set off the satchel, and therefore it could kill people in core game modes. I kind of like the fact that you had to sacrifice both your lethal and your tactical to gain that power, rather than just having a lethal Claymore or Bouncing Betty without having to combine anything with your tactical. Now, of course, I am a bit biased towards more aggressive Call of Duty games. I like it when the game promotes and encourages movement, rather than promoting and encouraging more campier playstyles. And at the end of the day, I don't think my overall impression of this game would have changed much if they did have a lethal Bouncing Betty instead of just a tactical S-Mine. But it is one little thing that I appreciate that they did with Vanguard. As for the next thing that I like that they played around with this game, but I still feel like it's got some room for improvement, and I don't feel like the implementation was flawless, this is combat pacing, where instead of splitting up the map pool where you have some 6v6 maps and then some 10v10 maps with maybe a bit of overlap, instead everybody plays the same maps and they just let the player choose if they want to play tactical, assault, or blitz. Where tactical has the lowest player count, assault is in the middle, and blitz has the highest player count. I do like the idea of putting that choice in the hands of the players so they can sort of choose how chaotic they want the experience to be. Now again, I don't think this was a perfect system. I think splitting it up 3 different ways was a bit overkill, and they ended up scrapping assault eventually, so it is just tactical and blitz. And another issue with it is these were more so preferences rather than set filters when you were searching. So sometimes if you wanted to play blitz, it would force you into tactical matches even though you didn't have that selected sometimes. And I don't think that's necessarily ideal. So it clearly wasn't a perfect system in my eyes, but I like that they tried this, and I feel like with more iteration over time, they could end up doing great with a combat pacing system. Next up, a little thing I wanted to give them credit for, even though they weren't the first Call of Duty game to do this. I love that they displayed advanced stats in the Gunsmith, so you can see the exact coded values of the characteristics of your gun, like your aim down sight time, your damage, rate of fire, things like that. And also you can see exactly what happens with various attachments and how they impact your guns, so you're not left guessing when it comes to that. And finally, there's one last thing I wanted to give credit for in the What They Did Right video, and this is their ranked play system. While I would have preferred if it came out sooner than it did, it still took a couple seasons before we started seeing ranked play. I do feel this is the best ranked play system we've seen in many years, at least, with Call of Duty. I think it's definitely better than what we saw in Cold War, and it's better than the non-existent rank play that we had in Modern Warfare 2019. And even though I'm not huge into competitive play, and I didn't personally play ranked play a whole lot, I can definitely appreciate the ranked play system that they brought with this game, and I hope they use a similar template going forward. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on at least a good handful of things that came to my mind that Vanguard did right. And overall, even though I know this isn't a popular opinion in the Call of Duty community, I had a good amount of fun with Vanguard this year. And I do think that really came out for anybody that follows me on Twitch. I streamed this game a lot this year, and while of course I had my frustrations, I genuinely had fun with it more often than not. Now, to be clear, this is nowhere near my favorite Call of Duty game of all time. I'm not even going to say that this is a great game by any means. All I'm saying is I managed to have fun with this game, and I don't hold the same opinion that many in the community do, that this game is absolute irredeemable trash. It's certainly got a long list of issues that I'll be talking about in the second part of this series, so make sure you get your popcorn ready for that one. I'll try to have it up within the next week or so. But at the end of the day, I had fun with this game, and I wish more people in the community had the same experience that I did. So there we go, that wraps it up for what Vanguard did right, and this is where I want to hear some positivity in the comments down below. If you can manage, please try to save the more negative comments for the second part. There'll be plenty of time for you guys to vent all your frustrations, but just for this video, I'd like you guys to focus on some of the positives. Even if you didn't really like this game, what are some good things that you can think of that Vanguard did right this year? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.